Well, hello from a very, very wet Aviva Stadium ahead of Ireland's Six Nations game here tomorrow. 3 down, 2 to go. We are certainly in the business end of this championship, and it will be the first time that a Friday night Six Nations game will take place here. Tracey is here with me. Andy Farrell obviously named his team yesterday, and he really has gone on this trend of making a handful of changes again, 5 changes, and he's kind of come out with this kind of squad building depth thing with a real intent almost, hasn't he?
Yeah, Sinead, for the second game in a row, he's made 5 changes to his starting team. That's on the back of making 6 changes to the team for Italy from the defeat to France. So I was doing the numbers yesterday. By the end of tomorrow night, Andy Farrell will have used 33 players in the 4 Six Nations games. He'll have handed out 2 full debuts to Edwin Adogbo and Nathan Doak, who's obviously on the bench tomorrow. And he'll have handed out 10 Six Nations debuts. So that is a hell of a lot of... Andy Farrell's been kind of loath to use the word rotation, but to me, it's definitely rotation. And I think one eye on the bigger picture, which I don't think is any harm at all. Now, his hand has been forced slightly by, injuries. You look at the back 3, Mac Hansen, Hugo Keenan, the 3 first choice loose head props missing out through injury. But I think in the long run, it could be a blessing in disguise, because Ireland are still technically in the Six Nations hunt, still potentially could win a triple crown with one eye on the next World Cup. So I think this is exactly what you'd want to see for the Six Nations the year before a World Cup.
Yeah, and of course we're here for the Ireland captains run their final training session before that game tomorrow. A massive team, Cian, hasn't it? Has been kind of the Ulster takeover.
Yeah.
5 players in the starting team, 2 more on the bench. Jacob Stockdale gets his shot again, doesn't he, on the wing. Nick Timoney will make his first Six Nations start, and the team are just coming out there. We'll get into Tom O'Toole in a moment. As you mentioned, Nathan Doak will make his international debut off the bench as well. But it feels like this feel-good Ulster vibe is almost contagious, and it's just spreading.
It's exactly what you want to see in Irish rugby. Obviously, for so long, Leinster have been doing the heavy lifting, and Andy Farrell has lent on that cohesion, and by and large, the results have been positive. But you want all 4 provinces contributing to the Irish team. I think it helps supporters, obviously, from their native provinces to get behind the team more. 7 is a real brilliant achievement for Ulster, considering for this fixture last year in Cardiff, if you remember, Ulster didn't have a single player in the matchday 23, and that's actually happened a couple of times. Now, conversely, Connacht don't have any players in the matchday 23, so I think that's something that they will need to address. Obviously, Bundyaki is in the frame. Mac Hansen would be, you'd imagine, in the 23 if he'd been fit, but really you want all 4 provinces contributing to the Ireland team to make it a better team overall, really. And I think Andy Farrell has kind of recognised that. He's rewarded form. I think Richie Murphy has done an excellent job since he's gone up to Ulster. It also helps, I think, that the style of rugby that Ulster have been playing under Mark Sexton, who's come in from Connacht, Johnny Sexton's brother, it's very much aligned with how Ireland play here. So I think maybe in the past, obviously, Ulster went through a bit of a low ebb, but they weren't quite marrying up the styles to what Ireland played. So that naturally made it more difficult to players to force their way through. But you look at the likes of Robert Balakoon, Stuart McCluskey playing the rugby of his career, Nick Timoney. I think now when they're coming into camp, they feel more comfortable because what they're doing day to day in Ulster is much more aligned. And I think that in an ideal world, that's how the IRFU would like it across the board between all 4 provinces.
I had to laugh at Nick Timoney earlier this week. He was saying that the Ulster lads call Johnny Sexton Mark's brother, which I thought was kind of a funny one. It's a big day, isn't it, for Stockdale, though, tomorrow? He feels like this could be one of his last chances. Yeah. And Andy Farrell has shown his faith in him in the past.
Yeah, and I think it's a smart decision by Andy Farrell. I do. I think, in terms of man management, look, Jacob Stockdale was one of a number of players who didn't have a good night in Paris in the opening round. He actually got better as
I thought he did in the second half,
went on, but he really struggled in the air, and we've obviously seen and we've spoken at length how important that aspect of the game is. But you look at a guy like Tommy O'Brien who lost his place. He actually probably had a worse game in Paris. He got taken off that night. Jacob Stockdale didn't. But Tommy O'Brien got his chance off the bench in Twickenham and took it with both hands. And really, I think it's harsh on Tommy O'Brien. But I think if this was a Grand Slam decider, my gut would tell me that Tommy O'Brien would probably be starting. But in terms of trying to put an arm around Jacob Stockdale and saying, not quite maybe as blunt as this is your last chance, but he's got to take his opportunity. He's a big, powerful, strong man. And we didn't see that enough in Paris. So I'd imagine that Andy Farrell would be saying to him, well, look at what Tommy O'Brien did when he came in last week. Now you're getting your start. He's a for like replacement for James Lowe. I think that's something to consider as well. Obviously, he has the left boot. So does Jamie Osborne. So, I mean, even if Tommy O'Brien had played, you still would have had the left-footed kicking option. But now Ireland still have the two. So that's quite useful. But it does feel like a big opportunity. I think defensively, he's going to have to be on point because, like, Wales caused Ireland a lot of problems in Cardiff last year, and their back three in particular were excellent. Ellis Mee has come back in, and he's a very dangerous player. I really like the look of him. Bit like Stockdale, he's tall, he's rangy, and I would imagine Wales are going to try and get after the Ireland back three in the air. Now, they've been excellent over the last couple of games, Ireland in that, but with Stockdale coming into the back three, he really needs to nail that part of his game.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We get on to the Wales team. We might just have a shortened time today, seeing as the squad is out already. But like, just like this, it has been a crazy kind of championship, hasn't it, so far? So like, people are saying like that Ireland need to back up now after. I don't know, will Ireland quite put up the kind of 42 points that they did in England next week? What's your reading of that?
I think, like, privately, they would expect another big performance. I mean, Andy Farrell has given guys like Stockdale a huge opportunity here. And in the past, it's been one of the criticisms that I would have had of this Ireland team, that when Andy Farrell has tended to rotate his team, for want of a better term, it hasn't always been fluid. But it's actually, they've gotten better as the Six Nations has gone on. You know, in the past, they usually start like a train, but they kind of flipped that on its head, whereas there was definite improvements against a very good Italian team, and obviously it stepped up so much against England last time out. And I think Andy Farrell will expect more of the same in terms of an improved performance. Now, it'll be very hard to improve on such a big performance in Twickenham, but back at home a Friday night, like you mentioned, it'll be absolutely buzzing here tomorrow night. And I think Ireland will be expecting a big win. They're two teams at very different stages of their development. It's desperately sad to see what's going on in Welsh rugby. We don't have time to get into the ins and outs of all that, but most of our listeners will be well aware of it. It's very, very sad to see. But like, to take the sort of emotion out of it, that's none of Ireland's concern, and they have to do what they have to do, and that is to get a bonus point win here tomorrow to give themselves a chance of potentially staying in the title hunt, depending on what happens in Murrayfield between France and Scotland on Saturday, and also to give themselves a potential shootout with Scotland here for a Triple Crown next week.
Yeah, and a big day for Jemson Gibson Park tomorrow. He'll win his 50th cap. I know you're writing a piece for him for tomorrow as well. Lovely video put out by the RFU this morning with his family and his wife Patty and their three kids. But
you want your heart to stone, not
it was absolutely beautiful. But like, wow, like that performance obviously against England last weekend. And I think one of the big things about Gibson Park as well, that he has in some ways softened that transition post Johnny Sexton, hasn't he, in terms of he's really stepped up as a leader as the rain comes down. That's even more here.
Johnny Sexton standing behind you in earshot. Look, I think since Johnny Sexton has retired, Jamison Gibson Park has become the leader of the Irish backline. He was always hugely influential, but when you take a guy like Johnny Sexton out, I think he has taken more responsibility on himself. Obviously, the 10 situation has been massively in flux, and I think that's heaped even more responsibility on Gibson Park. But like, you think back to Sinead 2016, when he first arrived in Leinster, he arrived as like the deputy to Luke McGrath, and like, this is kind of what I'm writing about tomorrow. Unless you were an avid Super Rugby watcher, his name wouldn't have meant a huge amount. No one really knew like how good he was. He was a bit of an unknown quantity. Andy Farrell clearly saw something in him. He became Irish qualified on the eve of the 2019 World Cup. It was a bit late in the cycle to force himself in, but as soon as Andy Farrell took over as head coach, he decided that this guy was going to be his scrum half. So he slowly overtook Conor Murray. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Ireland wouldn't have had the same level of success under Andy Farrell without Gibson Park. He has been totemic. He turned 34 last week, but I would say he's quite a young 34 because much of his Super Rugby career was spent on the bench at the Blues behind Piri Wipu, at the Hurricanes behind TJ Perenara. So while he might be 34, I don't think he's like a lot of other 34-year-olds, and like, he's out of contract at the end of the season. I'd be stunned if he doesn't sign a new deal, because I would fully expect by the time the 2027 World Cup rolls around that he will still be Ireland's leader of the backline and a key man.
Like, he was almost venomous the way he celebrated that first try that he scored, or his first try at Twickenham last weekend. It was incredible. Before we get kicked out here, because we could be kicked out any moment, anything else you want to raise? Because also as well, like, what a Six Nations Saturday we have ahead of us as well, like between Scotland obviously against France in Edinburgh, and then England against Italy in Rome. What chance 2 home wins there, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think Italy will be licking their lips at the prospect of beating England, who are coming in obviously after the back of two really poor performances against Scotland and Ireland. They've obviously ripped up the script in terms of their backliners changes in the pack as well. But I would expect a response from England. I just hope the Scotland and France game will be a bit of a shootout. I hope if the weather plays ball, and like the Friday night game here tomorrow night will be a great atmosphere. I would prefer if the games were on at weekends to give people who want to come from around the country. It's hard to get to Dublin for people from Limerick, Cork, Belfast, wherever it is, on a Friday evening with traffic and all that. In terms of what I'm looking forward to seeing from Ireland, you mentioned Tom O'Toole.
Yes.
His first test start at Lucid, like this is a massive opportunity for him against a Welsh scrum that had caused problems for Ireland last year. They brought Rhys Carey back in, but obviously Tom O'Toole plays tight head for Ulster, but Ireland have been really keen to see him on the Lucid side of the scrum, and I think if he goes well tomorrow, he could become a hybrid kind of proc for Ireland, which if you want to make a World Cup squad next year, that could be absolutely vital. So I think on a whole, it's a big test for the Irish scrum and a good opportunity, I think, to get a bit of confidence back in. Ronan Kelleher gets a huge opportunity. He would generally be deemed to be a stronger scrummager than Dan Sheehan. Well, we need to see it tomorrow night, because this Welsh scrum, while they can be kind of nitty gritty, a bit of dark arts, I think it's a good chance for Ireland to lay down a marker ahead of Scotland next weekend.
Okay, nice one, Cian. Thanks for that. We're going to be back with a podcast after the game tomorrow night, but follow all the build up with the Irish Independent.